Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be making a granny star blanket with the additional corners to make it into a square, which is quite exciting. I've only ever seen star-shaped ones online, so I thought, well, why not make it into a square, because it just looks a little different, and I think it finishes it off really nicely. So this is what I'm going to use today. I've got some stitch markers, so I'm going to move those out of my way. I've got a row counter. Or you can use a bit of paper and a pen, it's up to you. A darning needle to sew in loose ends, some snips, and I'm using a DK weight yarn for this tutorial. You can use any yarn you like, but I wanted to make something a bit lighter and not as heavy. So it's more like a springtime blanket. Do you know, when weather's still a bit chilly, but you don't need something as thick as a chunky blanket or an Aran. So with that, I'm using a 4mm hook, which is classed as an E-hook as well. So this one's one of my favourites. As you can see, it's getting a bit worn. Might have to buy a new one at some point, but still some life in the old girl yet. So onto the yarn I'm going to use. For my star portion of the blanket, I'm going to use 3 balls of DK. So the ones I'm using today is Papataya Batik. It's made in Turkey. You can put it on a 30-degree machine wash, but not recommended to tumble dry it. But it's the same as anything, really. It's 100 grams, and it is 360 metres or 393 yards. You don't have to use... you can use as much yarn for this project as you like and make this project as big as you like. I just want a nice size one because I'm making this for my little nephew who lives in Chicago area of America. So that's going to be a nice surprise for him in the mail. So I'm going to use these 3 for my star, and I've got an additional, I do actually have 3 of these to do my corners with. So the nice contrasting colours all together, it's going to make a beautiful rainbow blanket. Just look at that. So this is going to be interesting. So follow me on to the next part of the video and we'll get started. Right, so with our chosen yarn we're going to get started, and our chosen hook for that yarn, we're just going to make a slip knot for our hook and then chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we're going to make a chain 5 loop, so we're just going to slip stitch back into this first chain, pull up a loop and pull it through that first one, and you can just give it a little wiggle, just so you can see what we're doing. Right, so that's our chain 5 loop, and we're going to chain 3. 1, 2 and 3. This pattern pretty much starts out like a normal granny square, so if you've not done one of those before, it's quite an easy one to follow. And then we're going to put in 2 double crochet. So 1, 2, and this makes our first shell. So a shell is always going to be 3 double crochet, but since we're starting, this chain 3 does class as a stitch. Right, so what we want to do is chain 2. Because this makes a corner, and then pop in another 3 double crochet. So 1, 2, 3. So we need 4 shells in our first round to make it into a square. So chain 2 again, and then we're going to do another cluster, which is 3 double crochet. So that's 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, and then a 3rd, and that completes our 3rd shell of this round. Then chain 2 again. If you don't feel like you've got enough space here, you can just jimmy these across a little bit, and then place in another 3 double crochet to make our final shell of this round. So 1, 2, and then 3. Right, and then chain 2, because we still need to make our little corner for this little mini square, then what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch into the top of this chain 3 to finish our round. And then what we want to do on every round, we want to make sure we're working from a corner. So I'm not going to bother flipping this or turning it or doing anything spectacular. I'm just going to put in slip stitch into these 2 stitches, then slip stitch into this corner. Now you won't be able to see these slip stitches by the time your blanket's done, which is great news. And then I'm just going to go straight into round 2. So what I'm going to do is chain 3 and place in 2 double crochets to make that shell, then chain 2, and in the same space place in another 2 double crochets, another 3 double crochets even, my apologies. So this is what's called a corner shell. So a corner shell is always going to be 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. So that being said, with that corner we're going to chain 1, because this is now on a straight edge, and then in the next corner do another corner shell. So that's 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. So that's 1, 2 and 3. Chain 2 and then another 3 doubles. Chain 1 and then into this next corner a corner shell. So that's 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles. So that's that corner done, so chain 1, and then into our last corner do the exact same. So 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles. That's number 3. Then I'm just going to chain 1, and then we're going to slip stitch into this chain 3 right here. So make sure you're going to the third one, so that's 1, 2 and the third one's right here. Just like that. And that is the end of round 2. So I'm just going to pause this, just because if I make a mistake it's going to be impossible for me to go back and correct it. So on to the next part of this video. Right, round 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch across to our corner. So 1, 2 and then just slip stitch right there. Now this round is going to look a little bit busy, but it is going to work out. So chain 3 and make a corner shell. So that's going to be 2 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, because it's a starting shell. So that's 1, 2 and 3. Chain 1, and then in this middle one here, what we're going to do is we're going to do another corner shell. It does seem a bit confusing, but it does work out. So that's going to be 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets in this middle space. because then that makes a little corner even though it's on that flat edge. And then chain 1, and then we're in another corner, so another corner shell, so 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. So since we're moving on to a flat edge, chain 1, and then do another corner shell in this middle space. So again, 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. Chain 1, and then another corner shell. So I'm going to finish the rest of this row off camera. So in your corners, you're always going to chain 2 for this round, and in between, chain 1. So what I'm going to do is I will check back with you on round 4. Right guys, so excuse me, I've just finished round 3, and then I slip stitched across into my corner already. So round 4, what we're going to do is we're going to chain 3 and make a beginning shell. So that's a beginning corner shell. So that's 2 double crochet, chain 2, and then 3 double crochet. Chain 1, and then I'm just going to pop this down and show you what we're doing. Right, so what we need to do now is we still need to make it grow outwards. So we're going to put in a double shell, so that's one of these corner shells, into each and every single one of these points. So we're going to miss these spaces in between and just work through where our chain 2 corners are with a chain 1 in between. Make sure that it was a chain 1. Yes, it was. Right, so I'm going to chain 1, then skip over this one here, this space, and work into this one right here with another corner shell. So that's three doubles, chain 2, 3, and 3 doubles. So that's my chain 2, and then I'm just going to go in to the same space and finish this corner shell. Chain 1, and then skip the space and work into the chain 2 space in your next corner shell. Absolutely loving these colour transitions on this yarn today. It's going to look spectacular when it's all done. I'm sure my little nephew's going to enjoy it. Then chain 1, skip this space here and work into this next corner space. With another corner shell, so 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. Chain 1, and then skip the next space and work into the next with, you guessed it, another corner shell. So we're just going to continue like this for the rest of this round. So I will be continuing off camera to try and cut down the video size a little bit. I tried uploading a video a couple of days ago. I think it was for the teddy blanket, and it failed 3 times because it doesn't like uploading videos which are longer than an hour, so it might have to go in 2 parts this video, but I'm not sure yet. Right, so continue on like that, and when you finally get around here, don't forget your chain 1, and then to join and slip stitch into your corner. So I will check back with you on round 5. Right guys, so moving on to round 5, I'm just getting a bit more yarn out here. I don't know why I never do it before pressing record, but hey, that's live. Right, so what we're going to do on this round is chain 3. I've already slip stitched across there by the way, and do a beginning shell. Chain 2, and then to finish with shell is another 3 double crochets right in the same space. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Right, so what we're going to, I'll just talk you through this round. I will follow on a little bit. What we're going to do is we are going to do 1 shell in the space and 2 in the point. 1 in this space and 2 in the point, all the way around. So, that being said, we're going to chain 1, because technically this is going to turn into a flat edge. And then in this space right here, the bigger space, we're going to do 1 shell. So 1 shell is just going to be a regular granny shell of 3 double crochets. So we now have shells and corner shells to contend with. And chain 1, and then since we're in on another point, we are going to put in 2 shells with a chain 2 space in between. And chain 2, and then in that same space another 3 double crochets. Chain 1, and since we're at another one of these slightly larger holes there, it's going to be 3 double crochets just to make 1 shell. Chain 1, and then we're back on a point. So you guessed it, it's going to be shell, chain 2, shell to make a corner. And 1 more double crochet there will finish, and then chain 1, and then back into this corner. So I'm going to finish the rest of this round off camera, like always. So just continue doing the same. So in these bigger spaces, you're just going to put in 1 shell, and in your point, it's going to be a corner shell. So I will catch back with you on round 6. Right guys, welcome back to round 6. So round 6 is basically the same as round 5, apart from we have an extra shell to do in between our points. So with that said, chain 3 and do a beginning shell in this point, so it's going to be a corner. So always a chain 2 in your corners, and then another shell. Then since we're going into what's considered as a straight edge, it's just a chain 1. Then in the next space across, it's just a shell on its own, which is just 3 double crochet. And chain 1, and then jump into the next space across, this one, and do another shell. chain one, and then we're back to a point, so that's a corner shell. So that's 3 chain 2 and then another 3 double crochets. So you can kind of see what we're doing now. It's starting to resemble a little bit of a star shape. And chain 1, and then we're back into doing our single shells. And chain 1, and then in the next do a shell. Chain 1, and then we're back in a point again. So that's shell, chain 2, shell. The yarn's a little bit grippy, it's wanting to fight with me again today. Right, so I'm going to finish this round off camera. So just as a recap, so in between your points it's just going to be shell, chain 1, shell, and then on your points it's going to be a corner shell, so that's a shell, chain 2, shell, all in the same space. So continue on all the way around and I'll meet you back for round 7. Right, on to round 7. We are looking star-shaped. And I'm absolutely loving this yarn at the moment with how all these colours are kind of falling around. Right, so what we're going to do is we are going to do a beginning corner shell, so that's a chain 3, 2 double crochets, chain 2, and another shell in that same space. So this round's going to be a little different to the previous, but not by much. Just have to be careful on what we are doing. So this is where the repeat really starts to show off its true nature. So what we're going to do is we are going to put a chain 1 after that, just so we know it's there. So what we're going to do is we are going to we're going to put a shell in here. We're going to miss this middle one, and then we're going to put a shell in here and then back to our point. So what this is going to do is it's going to start drawing it in like this, and so it can go outwards like that. So let's get on. So again, put a shell in your next space. And then I never chain 1 here because I always like to make sure when I'm skipping this space that we don't end up with a big gap, because you know you're going to see it if it's really big. So try and keep these quite close together so you can fold your fabric over a little bit, hold your stitches, and just like that, and then continue on with your shell. You know, so if you're not happy with it the first time you do it, try again. Just rip that out, and just go for it. So chain 1, because we're now back up to a point where we're going to do another corner shell. Sorry, I keep doing this with my work today, because I'm not always looking in my monitor. Well, when I say monitor, I mean my phone screen. I literally have my phone jimmied to a selfie stick, which is then jimmied onto a floor standing camera tripod. So it's not the best setup in the world, but hey, it serves its purpose. Right, so we've just done our point here, so we are going to do this next one where my thumb is. Oh, my doggy's barking. Oh, I wonder if that's a postman. Maybe. I'm going to pause this right now and I'll be back in a sec. Right, sorry if this part of the video were a bit clippy. That was actually half of my recent hobby order, which I will be doing a unboxing soon as the rest of it arrives. I think it's because they always ship in standard size packets, so yeah, so that's why it's coming in 2 different parcels. So I'm having to untangle this darn yarn. It's not been the best to work with today. Right, so carrying on, we're going to miss this middle one and jump over into this space right here. So missing that middle, because what this is going to do is it's going to create like a valley and to draw it in whilst we are putting extra things up here. Chain 1 and then back into your point. So the rest of the pattern is relatively easy from this point forwards. It's going to be, you only have to remember how to do 3 rows, and 2 of those rows are exactly the same. So this is the row what's different. So this is where we kind of cinch it in the middles, and then the other 2 rows is just basically two full rows and working in a regular pattern. So I'm going to continue this row off camera, and then I'll show you what I mean on the next row. So I will see you back for row 8. Right, so this is going to be round 8. So I'm just going to tell you the repeat now. So the next 2 rows is going to be your corner points, like always. It's always the same in these points, and then it's going to be 1 shell in each of these spaces in between, and then a point, and then 3 spaces there. And then on the next round, it's going to be the exact same thing. It's going to be your corner point, and then 1 in each in between, and then your corner, and so on and so forth. So I'll just do a couple. I'll just do a couple just to make it a little bit more clear. So again, we are just going to do our regular beginning corner here. Yeah, a little bit more yarn out. And chain 1, and then straight into the next space with a shell. Chain 1. Now we're going to go into this space here. Like that. Chain 1 into the next space. Chain 1, and then we're back into a point, so that's shell, chain 2 and shell. Chain 1 into our next space with a shell. Chain 1 into this the middle space in our valley now. can always tell these ones because the space is a little bit bigger. Chain 1 into the next. Chain 1, and then I'm just going to finish off here. So this is in a point space, so that's shell, chain 2 and shell. Chain 2 and shell. Right, so that's this is all we're going to do for the next 2 rounds. So this round, including 1 round extra. So I will be back with you on round 10. So this is round 8. You're going to do round 9, which is the exact same. So on round 9, it's going to be your corners, and then work into each one of these, and then back to your corner again. So I will see you for round 9. Round 10. Yeah, round 10. Right, welcome back to round 10. As you can see, it's starting to grow quite rapidly. So what I've done is I've just done the 2 rounds where you don't miss any spaces. And now this is row 3 of the repeat where you now make your spaces. You can always tell whereabouts in your pattern you are because you need to skip this middle one. So if you don't have a middle one there, it means you've either done 1 row too many or not enough. So always go back and check, because you can see here, there's our hole. And then we have 2 rounds. And then we have another hole. So that's always a good indication on where you are on your pattern. So I'm just going to do point to point for you, just so it's completely clear on what we're doing. So a beginning shell into this corner, chain 2, and then another shell to make our corner shells. Chain 1, and then I'm just going to work into my next space with a shell. And I need to do another one here because this is the one I'm skipping. So each time the repeat comes round, you end up with more and more spaces what you have to fill in first. As you can see there. So without chaining, I'm just going to skip this one and go straight on to the next one. So I'd just like to hold that first stitch in there quite nice and firm so it doesn't end up spreading apart on me. And chain 1, then onto the next space. Once you get the hang of this pattern, it is so easy. You don't even have to think about what you're doing. If you are doing your own colour sequence, so what I do recommend is that you do it in rows of 3. So then it makes it even easier to know which row you're on then. So if you do your 2 rounds without skipping a space, and your one round where you do skip a space, then it's obvious that the next round you're doing 2 solids because that's where you change your colour. Or what you can do is you can put a stitch marker in. So if I were going to do it, I'd put a stitch marker in the round that we skip. And then that means the next 2 is the 2 solid rows. So there we have it. So you're just going to work the same 3 rows. So this one is the one where we're skipping our middles, and then the next 2 rounds will be a round where you don't skip your middles. So that's all for this part of the video. What I'm going to do is I am going to now finish using this ball of yarn and my other 2 balls of yarn, and the next part of the video will be how to square this blanket off. So keep stitching, stitch as fast as you can, don't break your fingers though, and I will see you back soon shortly. Bye! Right, hey there guys, as you can see we have a very colourful blanket here. So after you finish your star and you make it to be as big as you want it to be done, you want to finish on a row where you're getting rid of, where you're doing your decrease. So that's where you want to finish on, and this is what I'm choosing as background. So I'm going to flash up a little picture just after this little clip, just to show you exactly where we're starting. But we're going to start in just next to one of these valleys in this stitch right here, because it is a bit difficult to see. So what I'll do is I'll flash up a picture and then we'll get started. So follow me back on for the next part of this video, and I'll see you in a second. Right guys, welcome back to the next part of the video. So where you want to start, like I've just said, is right in the middle of your valley. So as the pattern comes down, this is the middle stitch where we've just skipped over on our last row, and I'm just starting in to the left because I'm going to be working that way, and I've just tied on in the first stitch in that shell there. So with that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up a loop and chain 1, and then I'm going to work my row. So my first shell goes into this middle space right there, and then you can just carry on working. Just like you have been doing throughout this tutorial. I'm not going to do the entire row because these rows are a little bit lengthy. Once you reach your point, you're going to do a corner shell, so that's a shell, chain 2 and shell, just like we have been doing. That stays the exact same. The only thing what changes on this is, rather than working in the round, we're going to be working backwards and forwards. So you do have to turn your blanket after each row. So I'm going to work until I reach my next valley, so I will see you in a few moments. Right, so I'm just coming up to the other side of this triangle section, so the other side of what is going to be our corner. So I'm just going to work into this middle section here. So this is the same point as what we started on the other side. So just carrying on with my clusters, and then I want to do a cluster right in this middle stitch here. I'm loving how this looks on the monitor screen at the moment. It looks so nice. really nice and cheerful colours. Right, so I've just worked that middle shell into right into the corner of that valley right there, and then what I want to do is I want to chain 2, and then I'm going to count 3 stitches, 1, 2 and 3, and then I'm going to do a single crochet in that stitch there, and then I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to count 3, and this is this chain stitch. I am going to include this. This isn't. It's difficult to explain. It's not set in stone on which stitch you have to go through. Just as long as your rows are evenly spaced apart. So sometimes you might have to change it a little bit. Sometimes you might not have to. So I think it's to do with the how the stitch count actually works out. So I'm just going to go into this middle stitch here, and I'm just going to do a slip stitch on this one. And then I'm ready to turn my blanket over, so bear with me 1 second. There's a lot of fabric here to turn each time. Normally I wouldn't make a project this big for a tutorial, but I am sending this one over to my little nephew, so I wanted to do a full-size child's blanket. Not a baby blanket, but the next size up. Right, so I've just turned my fabric, and this is going to be the start of row 2. What we need to do now is we need to put a shell into this open space here, because each row we are actually doing increasing, and this is where we do the increase here. So and then you just carry on like normal. So sorry, I forgot to mention, with this first shell, the chain 2 before you turn is actually classed as a stitch. So that's the beginning shell on that one is the turning chain, and it is also just to double crochet. Just for a bit of clarification on that. And then I'm going to work all the way to the other side, just like we have been doing. So I will not do it all on camera because I don't want to bore you all to death, because this video is getting a bit lengthy as it is. So I will see you in a few moments. Right, so I'm nearly back to my other corner, so I'm just going to keep stitching and do this last couple of shells. So the only problem with this part of the blanket is each row it does take you a little bit longer to do because of the extra shells. Unlike a lot of other projects where it kind of, especially corner to corner, where you start getting near your end and it starts going quicker and quicker and you're like, yay, finally finished. This one, no, this drags off a little bit, unfortunately. Right, so now I'm nearly at this corner. What we need to do is we still need to do our increase shell. So what we do there is where we started this row, if you just lift this shell up and kind of separate it a little bit, in this space right here, in between our first shell, what we've done, and where we connected it, we're going to pop a shell in there. So right through this open space. It will open out a little bit more once you've got a few stitches in there. So that's technically the end of our row. So what we need to do is now join it onto here. Move this tail out of the way slightly. And then what we're going to do is chain 2. Now this first stitch can pull a little bit, so always be aware of that you make sure you count that one. So I'm going to count this chain as 1, that single crochet, the double crochet there as 1, and I'm going to go into this third one with a single crochet. Then I'm going to chain 2 again and count another 2. So 1, 2, and I'm just going to slip stitch into that first one. So again, so you just have to do it by eye. What I do recommend, I'm turning my blanket again, what I do recommend is after you've completed one corner, count how many rows you have and try and aim for that with the other 3 corners as well. It'll save you a lot of hassle with your blanket, either your corners being accentuated or with it kind of gathering up and puckering up. If you don't have enough gaps in between stitch spaces in between your rows, it can gather up slightly and it ends up looking a bit messy. Right, so now we've turned our blanket, what we're going to do is we are just going to yarn over and work into this open space here, which is that chain 2 we've just made, with 2 double crochets, because our turning chain counts as a stitch, chain 1, and then carry on working. So that's basically how to make your corners progress into corners. So just working over from one valley to the next over one peak and then turning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back at the end of this corner on my final row, and I will just show you how to finish the corner of your blanket really, and which stitch to go into, and just so you can see how it worked up. So I will be back in a little while after I've finished this corner, and yeah, keep stitching and enjoy. So I will see you in a few minutes. Right, so I'm now just coming up to my last row on this corner side. So what you want to do is, after you've put in your last shell as your increase, this is what I'm doing now. I'm going to chain 2. Now, it doesn't matter if this number isn't completely correct, just as long as it's in the ballpark area. So I'm going to count a couple of stitches and then make a decision, and I'm just going to go through there. And then chain 2, like normal. And then this is going to now bring me right up to the tip of my star point. So then so that's my corner shelf right there. So in that chain 2, that's where I'm going to slip stitch, because when it comes to putting a border on this later on, leaving this as free as possible actually works in your favour. So I'm just going to turn my blanket round. There's a lot of it now, as you can see, and I'm just going to continue this last row as normal, and then when I get right round to the other side, you're just going to slip stitch into this corner shell on the opposite side of where you've been working, but I'll follow up that up with a small clip, so I'll see you in a few moments. Right, so as you can see, I've just finished my other corner, so I'm going to stop the tutorial now. And basically, to put a border on this, I would just do a granny stitch for about four or five rounds, and that is it. So that is your completed granny star square blanket. Don't forget to give this tutorial a good like and a subscribe to my channel for other tutorials coming in the future. And also, if you fancy hopping on over to Instagram, my name on there is Kyle Crochet. Or Crochet Kyle, I can't remember which way around it is a lot of the time. So yeah, again, I will see you soon, and thank you for watching. Bye!